This is Aaron Golub, host of the Blind Ambition podcast. We'll be bringing you world-class leaders, entrepreneurs, and athletes, people who have overcome obstacles and used their ambition to create enormous success in their lives. If you enjoy this podcast, if you get anything out of it, the only thing I'll ever ask is that you subscribe, rate, and review. Hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Aaron Golub, and this week I'm joined by Jackie Wilson. Jackie, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Aaron.
So, give my listeners a little background on yourself, your career, how you got to where you are today, working in sports. But for anyone who doesn't know who you are, let's start with a little brief introduction.
Yeah, sure. I am a husband, father, athlete, lawyer, who's passionate about issues of diversity and inclusion. I have, worked in many different industries. I started out as a corporate litigator. Following that, I had the opportunity to follow my passion, which was always been to work in sports. And so I was general counsel of a sports agency, All Pro Sports and Entertainment, to where I was a certified agent that represented NFL players as well as overseas basketball players. Entrepreneur. I had a fitness tech company that specialized in bringing in wearable technology into the fitness space. But sports has always been my passion. It's been my first love. And so now I'm back in the sports industry. I'm the executive director of diversity and inclusion for BSE Global, which is the parent company for the Brooklyn Nets, Barclays Center, New York Liberty, Long Island Nets, and Nets GC, the gaming team.
Nice. That's awesome. What do you think drove you to a career in sports? So many people are passionate about sports, love sports, but just don't go down that path. Why? I know you started off in law school, you started off as an agent, and then you kind of took a step back going into the fitness industry. What eventually drew you back to the world of sports?
Well, like I said, sports was my first love. And like so many, young people, I, had dreams of being a professional athlete. I wanted to be a professional athlete. My skill set wasn't conducive to making that happen. But I fell in love with a old HBO show called Arliss. And that show had, the main character was a major sports agent. And I saw myself at a very young age saying, like, if I, don't make it as a player, I'd love to be an agent. And so I actually went to law school with the plan of becoming an agent. That was always my dream to get into sports. And then I fell into, entrepreneurial life was something that, an opportunity presented itself. I was interested in it, and I like to seize the opportunity. But in the back of my mind, I always knew that I wanted to get back into sports. This is where I feel most comfortable. This is where I feel like I can really have the biggest impact and promote the biggest change.
That's awesome. What was the journey like as an entrepreneur? Why did you eventually give it up outside of wanting to go into the world of sports? What were the challenges you faced, and how were you able to overcome them to build a successful business for the time that you did it?
I mean, entrepreneurial life is, it is fun. It's exciting. It is stressful. I always, liken it to building the airplane, on your way down type of thing. It's flying by the seat of your pants. And I truly enjoyed that. And I would say some of the struggles with that are some of the lessons that I take with me. And, it's making, quick decisions on limited information. It is the ability to, the company sinks or swims with your efforts and the teams that surround you. And I loved, every aspect of that. And I take that mentality with me today. It helps me work with my team now in terms of, collaborating, in terms of making sure that, the team is on the right track. Because when you are an entrepreneur, everything, rises and falls with you. And so you have a different level of accountability that comes within that.
And so, taking a step back, where you are today, working with all these professional teams, A, what is that like being in that type of space? And then B, why diversity and inclusion? What drew you to that part of it specifically?
Working with the different teams is great. All of the teams have, very, very unique profiles, from the Brooklyn Nets to the New York Liberty to the Long Island Nets. Like, everybody is different that come within that are extremely exciting. Diversity and inclusion, though, is something that has been, important to me my entire life, particularly in the sports industry. I grew up playing tennis in Atlanta, Georgia. And as a Black tennis player, I was oftentimes one of one. And so I learned at a very early age the importance of diversity, the importance of representation, because my mother went out and recruited my friends and other people that looked like me just so that, I wasn't the only Black player, on the court. And so taking that into the sports context now, there's, the makeup of the players that are on the court and they're on the field do not oftentimes mirror the makeup of the people that are in the boardroom making the decisions. And that's important for a number of reasons. It's important, for the players to see people that look like them, in these types of positions. It's important to the community in which these teams, call home. But it's also important on the business aspect, because having different people in the room from diverse backgrounds changes how you market, how you sell tickets, and your ability to do so in a manner that uplifts the community, uplifts the team, but doesn't do things that come across as offensive.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. What, how impactful was the role that your mother played at a young age? I know you said that she would go and try and recruit other people, your friends, to join you on the court, so you weren't the only Black player. And what role did she play in your life, and how do you think that that's impacted you today?
It's extremely huge role. I mean, it helped shape the way that I think and approach situations. Because, while she was looking to make sure that there was, representation and making sure that I felt comfortable, she was also very real about the fact that this is the way that the world will be sometimes. You may be one of one. What are you going to do in that situation to, 1, survive, 2, thrive, and then 3, create opportunities for other people that look like you to get into that space? And so, I'm learning these lessons at 10, 11, 12 years old. And fast forward to today, those are the still the thought process that I have as I go into work. We talked about the fact that, growing up, a lot of people wanted to be professional athletes. None of my friends thought about working on the business side of things because the representation wasn't there. They didn't see people that looked like them as CEOs or presidents of teams. Masai Ujiri wasn't working in Toronto. Sid Marshall wasn't working in Dallas. And Michael Jordan didn't own a team. So, people aspire to what they see. Yep. And so, learning that lesson at a very young age, with my mother, is something that is stuck with me.
Do you think that the world of sports is further along in kind of the diversity and inclusion space than the rest of the world? Because in my opinion, being in a locker room for so many years, especially at, the college level, it's almost like in that locker room, barriers kind of go down. It's not about, are you Black, are you white, are you Latino, are you a different color? It's not about, for me, I'm legally blind. It wasn't about my disability. It wasn't about any of those factors. It was about everyone coming together to meet a common goal, and everyone sort of, forgot about those other issues. And I feel like that, from my opinion, when it comes to sports, it's just such a great way to grow past that. And I think that the rest of the world and the rest of the industries should look more towards sports to learn from that.
I think you bring up a great point. And I think that the answer is yes and no from my perspective. I think that it can be a bridge. And I think that the experiences that you brought up are excellent. I think that when you are in a shared locker room with people who have, a common goal of we all have to come together, for example, in football, if you have the best football player on the planet on your team, you're not guaranteed to win games because doesn't play, may not play special teams, may not play defense, may not play offense. Like, it's likely only going to play one of those three roles. And so you are relying on everyone on that team to come together for a common goal. So I think in team sports, people that are on the same team can get past that. I think that there are still very big barriers in individual sports. I think that the world of tennis doesn't look the same. I think the world of golf doesn't look the same. And then I'd even say that on the team level, outside of your team, there are still issues of race. So while your team may be one unit because you guys are working towards a common goal, your opponent is not your teammate. And so I've been in numerous situations to where my team has been together and there've been racist issues that have happened with opponents or racist issues that have happened with fans. So I think that sports can be a place of coming together. I think that the biggest benefit of sports right now is that sports is leading the discussion. And I think that having the discussion is extremely important because these are not issues that people aren't aware of. They are issues that people sweep under the rug and do not discuss. And if you can't confront issues, you can't change them.
Yeah, and I think that, and I know people say this all the time, but in the past year or so, a lot of these issues have come more to light, and it's not that they weren't happening before. I think people really get stuck in the sense of oh, are these new issues? They're not new issues. People just have smartphones. People are recording everything. These issues have been going on forever. It just, everything is public information now.
Yeah, I mean, things are public information, and I think that the younger generation has done a very good job of not biting the tongue. And I think that, my generation and above looked at some of these things as just commonplace. This is just the way that the world is. Mm-hmm. And I think that the issues that happened over this summer, really came to a boiling point to where you had critical mass of people saying, hey, this is not okay. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out a way to move forward. And we are unwilling to live this life any further. So you had, work stoppages in the world of sports. And that's what I mean by sports leading the discussion. Within that, you had, the Milwaukee Bucks decide that they were not going to play the game, and then had the ripple effect in the NBA, which then had the ripple effect in Major League Baseball, which had the ripple effect in tennis, and had the ripple effect in hockey. Everyone was taking notice and everyone was taking a stand. And that's where I think that true change can happen, because that was not happening in corporate boardrooms. Yeah. And so, but the corporate boardrooms had to take notice because the world stopped. And so now they're having those conversations. Now they have diversity and inclusion, roles within corporations. I mean, you can go look, my role now has gained more popularity and more importance over the last 9 months than I think that it's had in any other place. And I think a large part of that is because sports have led this discussion.
Yeah. It's interesting. I didn't know we were going to go down this path, but it's such an important topic to talk about, what do you think, because sports generally is leading the way with this, what do you think the next step is with sports to continue to the conversations or to make that next leap to address the issues?
I think it's twofold. I think that it is athletes continuing to use their platform to voice issues and concerns that are important to them. And then I think that it is incumbent upon teams and leagues to take those things to heart. Like, one, what the athletes want, but two, I agree with your earlier point that sports is a place to where people, should be coming together. You are working together for a common goal on the court. We should be working together for a common goal in the boardroom as well. And so, just like you need someone to play point guard, someone to play shooting guard, someone to play center, like those people are all diverse and different. You need those same different roles in the marketing department, the sales team. And so, I think that sports will just continue to lead this discussion.
Yeah, no, that's so important. And I completely agree. What advice would you give for someone, whether it be a young athlete or a young, person in business who's trying to find their way, maybe trying to break through some of the barriers they face within diversity and inclusion, or, make a name for themselves in the space that they're in? What, if someone had 2 minutes with you, what is the advice you would give them?
Be unapologetic about who you are and challenge social norms that don't make sense. One of the things that we talk about at work is like bringing your authentic self to work, whatever that looks like. We've oftentimes gotten caught up in the notion of what a professional looks like.
Yeah.
And if you subscribe to that old school philosophy, you're never going to be able to bring in, people of different backgrounds, different thoughts.
Yeah.
Because you're looking for one cookie cutter image. And
Yep.
so, if you can wear a hoodie and do your work, you should wear a hoodie and do your work. Of course, you should dress up, when it's appropriate, but just because someone, wears sneakers instead of loafers is not a reason to write someone off. So be your authentic self, and that will ultimately make you more believable, more reliable, and more productive.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here. I'm sure everyone is going to get so much out of this. Where can everyone find you online, your social media and things like that?
You can find me on Instagram at Jackie B. Wilson. It's Jackie B. Wilson. Same thing on, I think my Twitter is the same. I'm not that active on Twitter, more so active on Instagram, and then Jackie Wilson II on LinkedIn is where I keep a lot of my professional dealings.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'm sure my audience will as well.
Hey, Aaron, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it at all, if you got one thing out of it, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you.